we are up to the top of Amud Memches, and we're in the middle of an inyan, which we started in the middle of Amud Memvav. So after explaining the beer of what is Elam Ha'atzilus, the Kol HaNikra B'Shmi in the pasuk from Yeshai, Kol HaNikra B'Shmi L'chvei D'B'Rosiv Yitzosav Afasisiv, then begins on Amud Memvav, in the middle of Amud Memach B'Elam is Biyah, the contrast. The contrast of Elam is Biyah to Elam Ha'atzilus, whereas Elam Ha'atzilus is, whilst it may only be a horrible vad, it's still a likus, it's miyuchad, it's dovuk, iva chayu ichad, iva gamu ichad. Masha enkein, Elam is Biyah, Elam is nifradim, nivroim, yeshu metzias v'dov nifrad. To the extent that there can be a chet for ovin chas v'shalim, meaning something which is hepech ratzon Hashem. That's how non-dovuk, non-apparent, its attachment and its association is with kedusha, with elikus. And we explained this helps us understand what it means when it says in Pirkei Avos that the world was created with asarim moris and bechlal, the pashtu pshat in Chumash, the vayom Hashem, and came all of all of existence. The existence comes through amira, through dibur. Dibur functions as a helen v'hester on the oir. That the inner person, in the moshel of dibur, the person's inner thoughts, and even prior to their thinking, their consciousness, their intellectual and emotional makeup are all things that are, as we explained when we talk about Atzilus, they're nafshim. They're attached to the nefesh. They're not able to be conveyed to a zulas because they're too pnimi, they're too internal. And the koyach of dibur is to be able to be mailim u'master on that oir, such to the extent where it's possible to convey to a zulas the ideas or emotions, feelings that a person had. And the function of dibur is helen v'hester legamri. And it requires that the zulas has some familiarity with the code for which dibur is, in order to decode it and get some inkling of what dibur is trying to communicate. Because dibur mitzad atmei is just a bunch of phonemes. It's a dover zor legamri. It's a completely foreign thing to the ideas it's conveying. It's merely sounds. But that has the ability to achieve enough of a helen v'hester on their own, such that it can become conveyable. So similarly, in the nimshal, malchus is called dibur ha'elyon. The malchus functions as a helen v'hester on the oiris of Atzilus, such that it's possible and plausible that there can be ishabas briyesh ma'ayin of Elam is Biyah. Yeah, that's what we said last shir, and now we're going to take this further and elaborate on it. And this is what it says in the pasuk in Tilim, that the shemesh, the sun, and its shield are comparable to the Shem Havaya and to the Shem Elikim. The Shem Elikim hu bechinas hamogin v'nartik shemachase umaste al ve-Aravah, because the name of Elikim functions as a shield, a sheath that conceals and hides the oir of Shem Havaya. Now, what did we say Shem Havaya was? Already at the beginning, earlier on in the Maimah, we explained the Shem Havaya hu ba'atzilus. Right? The Shmi of Kol HaNikra B'Shmi is Shmi HaMiyuchad Bi, my essential name. Shem refers to Shem Havaya. And Shem Havaya is not Atzilus. Is Begilu in Atzilus. Yud b'Chachma, Hey b'Bina, Vav b'Zoh, and Hey b'Malchus. Because Havaya is the Gilu Erakav. And the Gilu Erakav is in Olam HaAtzilus. That's what we said at the beginning, remember? The Shem Havaya u'Ba'atzilus. Shu b'chinas Gilu Eirin Seif. Canal, like we said above, the Atzilus u'B'chinas Elikus Mamish Chuli. And as we explained, because Atzilus is Elikus, that's why there can be a Gilui of the Eirin Seif, which is the Shem Havaya. Avol b'chtei she's avo ilam is biyah, in order that it should be possible to create ilamis, which are biyah, bria tirasi, which are nivroim, which are nifrodim, which are metziasim. It's not possible directly from Eirat Tzilus. If you just have Eirat Tzilus, you just have Ilu, Alu, Vaita, and Vaita, and Vaita. And it doesn't matter how far you're going to go, you're still going to have Achdus, Yichud, Dveikus. To Ein Sof, it's going to be Elikus. Elikus is not going to gradually eliminate itself. It will always remain Elikus. And so from Eirat Tzilus, from Eiravah, it would not be possible to create Eimas Biyah, which are a Yesh and a Davar Nifrat. Ki'im al Yidei Shem Elikim. Only plausible and achievable through the name of Hashem Shem Elikim. Shem Ma'alim Mumaste al Eid Shem Havaya, which conceals the Eid of Shem Havaya. Shlo Yoy Begilu Kumeishahu, such that the Eid Havaya should not express itself as it is. For Ozef Shali is Yisavas Yesh. And then it's possible there can be the creation of the Yesh. So it's exactly what we're saying, just adding now Shemus. What before we called the Eir of Atzilus and the Tzimtzum of the Dibur of Malchus, we're now calling Havaya and Elikim. Yeah? It's the same paradigm, which they're slotting into. Or Kamaisha Koser, like it says in the Pasuk at the beginning of the Torah, Bereshis Bara Elikim. The Bara, when it says Bara at the beginning of the Torah, it's referring to Davku in Yisavas Hayesh. What type of Bria? A Bria which is Yisavas Hayesh. Making something entirely new. Kamaisha Koser Ramban, the Pirish Pasuk said, the Bara made al Yisavas Chadash, like we always quote from the Ramban, who teaches the word Bara to mean producing a new thing. That's what the taich of Bara is. Which that is a novelty. There was no such thing prior, before the creation, there was no such thing as Yeshus, Dvarim Nifradim. Everything was Elikus. And through the Pu'ula of Bereshis Bar Elikim, there was Metzias Yesh. This Havazois, he Mishem Elikim Davka. So it's Bereshis Bara. Who was Bara? Elikim was Bara. Davka Elikim. That creation of a Yesh with a Nifrad is only possible with Shem Elikim, not directly from Shem Havaya. V'yadua the Shem Elikim u'bechinas esis hadibur, and it's known to take all of to associate all of the things that we're discussing here. That Shem Elikim are the esis hadibur. What is Shem Elikim? Shem Elikim is the same thing. It's synonymous with the esis of Dibur, the Dibur Elyon, which we were discussing before. So all of the features of Esis HaDibur, which we used in our Moshel, and then we applied it in the Nimshal of Malchus of Atzilus, fits in with the notion of Elikim as well. Why is Elikim Esis HaDibur? That's why it's called Ir Elikeinu. If you remember back in Yechayenu Miyimayim, we brought the pasuk God Lavayim Hulam Ha'ed Ir Elikeinu. Right. That's what we said. That the Ir Elikeinu is Elikim, and God Lavaya is Avaya Yud Kivavki. And why? What is the association of Elikeinu with Dibur? Dibur is Nimshal La'avonim. Eis HaDibur, each eis is comparable to a stone, a brick, and like it says in Sefer Yetzirah, shtei avonim beinas shtei batim. That you can with two letters you can create two words, aleph, base, of and bo. And so the association of a city made up of bricks and with all those bricks and everything and houses and binyanim that you create with the bricks, that creates a city. So Ir Elikeinu is the where we see a sort of a hint to the association between Dibur and Shem Elikim. Okay.
Are we now, like in this new pshat of Shem Elikim, going to bring the whole muscle again and explain it in the whole, like?
No, you need to put all the pieces together yourself. He's going to spell out. I mean, he's not.
Because the whole thing with the cases.
He's not skimpy on the words.
The whole thing with cases worked with our first pshat, right?
I don't know what you mean with that.
The whole thing with the cases that Hashem's it can be either, really.
I don't know what you're referring to.
That's fine.
What are you referring to at the moment?
We had a mashal in the beginning about the king, right?
The king?
Or
Goblets.
with goblets.
Yes.
And talking about Shem and Vina like him.
Yes.
And now we're giving another pshat of what Shem like him is.
Why is it different to what we said over there?
Ah?
What did we say over there?
Not over there, but how Dibber works. What Dibber is. Before, and we were talking about Dibber over there. It's not to do with the king, but we said the whole thing of Dibber is that Megal and Machshava. Right?
Okay.
And over here we're saying actually, like we're bringing out the idea that really it's like a hester because it's not really like explanatory. You have to know the lingo to be able to decipher.
Right.
So now it seems like there's like two different ways of looking at Dibra.
No, I explained last time. The dibur that was being explained in the first Maimah was dibur legabe atzmai, whereas the dibur over here is the dibur legabe hazulas. So it's not talking about the same thing. It's not referring to the same aspect of dibur. Okay.
Okay.
So they're not. They don't have to be at cross purposes. They can both be maintained. Also, in the first Maimah, dibur was being compared to a kais. The function of dibur was itself a kais. So we were talking about dibur as a makabel. So, in the relationship between the makabel and the mashpia, I said legabi atzmai, dibur in relation to itself, or to the speaker. Dibur in relation to the medaber, or even in the concept of the maskil or the margish, the person, the margish hamidis, or whatever wherever the mashpia is in the makabel. That was the context, and we're explaining the moshel of cases. The cases is makabel, and cases and the case and all of these mashalim, the case, the sheirish of the makabel is deeper than the sheirish of the mashpia. But here, the focus is not. We're talking about. Remember, we're trying to give a new second explanation of what is midas hadin. What is the mayim reischim in the mashal? Yeah, the boiling water, the midas hadin. So we gave an explanation in Shuvah Yisrael that this is what you put into the cases, right? So we're now not talking about something as a makabel, the gabi atmai. We're talking about something which is a dovlich bilazula, the thing that goes into the case. So we're switching. Remember, all of these things are relative in the context. Bina is also a case legabi chachma, but bina is a mashpia legabi zah, right? Zah is a makabel from meichin, but zah is a mashpia legabi malchus. Malchus, the way we're explaining everything in the first two Maimarim, Malchus was a makabel from the Eiris al Yonim, from Zah. And Malchus was able to be mamshekh a kessel Zah, because of the Sheirish HaMalchus. So, but now, we're shifting everything. No longer is the makabel Malchus. We're now moving to the next part of the moshel. The next part of the moshel is, or the next part of the medrash is, he wished to create the world initially with midas hadin. What does it mean Hashem wanted to create the world initially with midas hadin? So in Shuvah Yisrael we explained he wants to create the world with midas hadin because he wants everyone to be obedient and he wants everyone to have a perfect avodah of Yiras Shamayim. And that perfect avodah of avodah b'chol ma'idecha, an extreme avodah because of the presence of Hashem, is going to compel a person. The Smeila Elyon is going to be the Smeila Tachtin. There's going to be the very self-reflective, and the person is being Eira to an Avodah B'chol Meidecha, which is not what they would ordinarily be able to achieve with an Avodah B'chol Abav B'chol Nafshecha, which is going to be which would be limited and mugbal to their abilities, and also would be mugbal because it would only be a hisponness about an Eira Liki, which is Malubish Leimus. Yeah, a quick Chazar of Shuvah Yisrael. So that was the Kavan. in this Maimah, but then he saw it wasn't Shaykh, which we're not going into how it wasn't Shaykh and what was the shit of Midas Rachmim, because that's going to be in the third section of the hemshekh. Now we're giving a different pshat. So the moment we're in the middle of giving that different pshat, so we're putting our pieces we're putting all of our pieces in place. That Eilam Atzilus, we're trying to explain Eilam Atzilus in contrast to Eilam Biyah. And once we get through all of that, we're going to recognize why did Hashem want to create the world Midas Hadin? Because in order to create Eilam Nifradim, to be really Nifrad and Dova Nifrad, which was the Kavanah, the more Midas Hadin you have, the better. So here Malchus is not functioning as the Makabel in the first Maimah. Malchus here is functioning as the Midas Hadin. The more Malchus you have, the more Eisius Hadibu you have, the more Helen Vehester you have, the more Nifrodim the Eilam Biyah are going to be. So why did Hashem want to create the world Midas Hadin? Why did Hashem want to create the world Mishem Elikim? With Dibra Elyon, with Malchus Vatzilis. Why? In order to produce the most perfect Yeshvad of a Nifrad Bifnei Atzmi. Why did Hashem want to create Yeshvad of a Nifrad Bifnei Atzmi? Because that when a Yeshvad of a Nifrad Bifnei Atzmi is able to overcome all the Nisyonas, that Avodas Hashem is Hamshachas Atzmis. That is the most that is ideal. It's a complete contrast to the previous Maimah. In Shav Yisrael, it's about Hashem's presence. In this Maimah, Midas Hadin is not the pshat, the strengkeit, the strictness that Hashem is going to have with the Nivroim. It's the strengkeit, the strictness Hashem is going to have with Himself. How much is the Eibush going to be matamtim himself? How much the Eibush can hide himself and conceal himself to facilitate the Yeshvad Dava Nifrad of Eilam Biyah. Do you understand? So we can't compare what we're talking about here to what we were talking about in the first Maimah, because we were talking about completely different things and a completely different relative system. There it was Dibul Legabi Atzmai. There it was Malchus Legabi the spheres of Yonis. And here the Ikke is about Dibul Legabi Hazulas and Malchus Legabi Eilam Biyah. Yeah? Okay. So we said Shem Elikim is Bechinas Eisis HaDibul Lechinikrer Lekeinu. V'hu Bechinas HaMogen V'Halavush Shema'anim U'Masti Al Ha'er B'chtei Sheyiyeh Esav Hayesh. So the function of Shem Elikim is the same function of Malchus Atzilus, the same function of Eisis HaDibul. It's to conceal the O in order that it's possible to have Esav Hayesh. V'zeu in Yina Parsa HaMafsekes Bein Atzilus Lebriya. And this is the concept of the parsa that we talk about in Sifrei Kabbalah, which separates Atzilus and Bria. Pareiches nikra hamalchus, ki hi pareiches mesech bein Atzilus l'chol advarim asher tachteh. Pareiches is the name we give for Malchus, this sort of curtain, because it is a separation between Atzilus and all the things below it. V'tikra pareiches b'chinas hatachtoina sheba. And which part of Malchus is called the pareiches? It's called the parsa. It's the lower part of Malchus. Shem avdeles ben kodesh lekodesh hakadoshim hainu biyah v'Atzilus k'mishkos makom acha aknashim. Fine. So it's not Malchus in its entirety. It's specifically the b'chinas tachtoina sheba, the lowest part of Malchus, which is now going to explain.
So when Biyah Kodesh, it doesn't mean it's actually Kodesh, it's just like the Beis Mikdash was Kodesh Kodoshim. So you can, so that Biyah is like considered Kodesh.
Nimtza. You hear? Nimtza? Prick up your ears for that. Sha'al Malchus, hu bechinas ha-pareiches va-ha-parsa, shebein Atzilus lebiyah. Hainu bechinas achreina sheba, shezo bechinas chitzoinis ha-malchus. So he takes from the pardes this point about it being the Bechinas Tachtoina Shaba, which is what? Bechinas Achreina Shaba, Bechinas Chitzonis HaMalchus. What is the Chitzonis HaMalchus? When Oisius HaDibur. Shul Bechinas Levush, Hamasti Liyisis Aves Biyah. I've written something here on the side of my Ranat. I don't know why I wrote it. But I wrote the words Oisius Biltim Sudarim. That must be something to do with Parsa. What is the point of the Parsa? That you talk about Oisius HaDibur. So Oisius HaDibur, which can be comprehended. It's just a sort of sentence structures and a normal thing. But then you can have Oisius Biltim Sudarim. Completely jumbled up letters. So we're talking about sort of the parsa. It indicates not just a sort of a veil which dims the light. You can have a curtain that is just the oir which penetrates the curtain is an oir which is less intense. It's not just a tzimtzum b'derech miut. It's not just a reduction, as we said before. You can't just have a reduction. You can't reduce elikus. Elikus will always remain elikus. Has to go through a proper tzimtzum, a proper helen behester. And this is the notion of a parsa. It's al derech having oisius built in the sudarim. Sentences that are completely, or words like you have in Kriva Kedusha, oisius perches, right? What the words like what on earth is it meaning? So it's a real code. And that,
like the Voynich manuscript.
So what it does is it completely conceals the oir beforehand. You don't know what it means. If you're saying the whole purpose of the dibur is to convey the seichel and the oir, that completely conceals it to the point where it becomes an entirely different thing.
Right. But the oir is still there, just Gabi is illicit, it's not right.
Right.
That would be what Atmos is, or like what Elikus in the world is.
Yep. As you're going to see. Yeah. Hold that. This is the next point. V'yesh loymar. This havas guf hanivroim debiyah. The actual bodies of these nivroim. The gufim. So what's the gufim? The gufim would be the kelim of Bria, the kelim of Yitzir, the kelim of Asiya, and all of the dvorim gashmim. They're the gufim. V'chein hakelim. And he says, "V'chein hakelim the esespirus debiyah." So besides the kelim, I don't know what gufim, maybe the gufim, other gufim in the Eilumis Ruchnim. Hein me'etzem ha'oisius atzma. It's not the pshat. They're a different thing from the oisius. A guf, a dover gashmi, and the kelim of Eilumis biyah. What is the substance of them? They are the oisius themselves. The oisius of Malchus Ta'atzilus, which is the chitzonius of Malchus, the Bechinas Tachtoina Shabai, they are the guf hanivroim. V'ha'oir ha'meir al yidei ha'dibur, and the oir which is capable of being conveyed through this dibur, zeu bechinas ha'oir v'achayis t'eses virus. When it comes to the oiris of Bria Yitzir Nasiya, that comes from the hashpa, which is conveyed by Malchus Tatzilus, Dibur Ha'elyin. But the guf hanivroim, that comes from the oisius themselves. Humasha nimshach al yidei hakelim, the eses viris. Humasha nimshach al yidei hakelim, the eses viris lachis nivroim. And all that is, and similarly, the chayis hanivroim, the chayis guf hanivroim, which we remember we talked significantly about in earlier, I can't remember exactly where now, that earlier Maimorim, we explained how even though the Guf and Ivram have their own Sheish Makeh, they have to have the Chayas to be Mechayim. Remember what I'm talking about? Right? So the Gufa the Nivroim which are created in Biyah are a product or a result of Shem Elikim, are a product of Dibra Elim, of the Chitzenius HaMalchus. And the Gufa Nivroim are the very Isis HaDibur of Malchus of Atzilus. And the Chayas, the Eir and the Chayas, is from the Eir in Seif, which Dibur conveys. The Kumay, and he goes further, he brings this into a much broader category. Kumay b'Sherish Harishon. Let's go back to the very, very beginning, before you even have Atzilus, from the Tzimtzum Harishon. Harimina Rishima, Shehem Bechinas Ha'oisius, the Malchus, the Ein Seif, Nishabu HaKelim, Kumay Shekos the Beis Chayim. Eir HaKav, switching. Eir HaKav u'Bechinas Ha'oir V'Achayis. So, when it comes to Tzimtzum Harishon, the Eir in Seif was nistalik, was nistalim, was concealed, and all that remained was a rishima of the Eir. Now, either was a rishima of the Eir, or by the removal of the Eir, was left the Koyach HaGvul, was left the Sherish HaKelim, and that we call Eisius HaRishima. So we just, exactly the same paradigm we're talking about here, between Atzilus and Biyah, we talk about Ein Seif Shlifnei HaTzimtzum and Ein Seif Shlachar HaTzimtzum. So before, initially everything was just Ein Seif, and what was dominant was the Ein Seif HaBligavul. When the Ein Seif HaGvul was Behel, through the Tzimtzum Harishon, there was a removal, in the sense there was a subduing of the Eir HaBligavul. And it was enabled for there to be the emergence of the Eir HaGvul, the Eir HaRishima. And that is the Sherish HaKelim. Whereas the Eir in Seif HaBligavul, after we became Eir HaKav, that became the Sherish of the Eir, that is the Eir Nechayis. So the Sherish HaKelim of Atzilus is from the Eisis HaRishima. And the Sherish HaEir is from the Eir in Seif Shlifnei HaTzimtzum, the Eir HaKav. So very similar. Obviously, that Eir in Seif Shlifnei HaTzimtzum, which comes through the Tzimtzum, so it's already modeled the move. But I mash across the base Chaim Shai Gulim V'Yesha on a base by God base of Mavisha Arim Sha'alev Say Perik Aleph Perik base. Kamoi Ken Yishleim Me Atzilus L'Biyah. So just like it is in Sherish Rishon, just like it is in the very beginning of all things, so too it is in the process from Atzilus to Biyah. Tisabes Anivroim Hu Me'etzim Ha'Eisius Shehem Bechinos Doimim Hu Mitzad Atzma Mimalim Mastirim. So think of it, Aderech Moshel, what we're trying to say over here. How are you going to understand this better? When a person who, let's call it Rav Talmud, teacher and student. The teacher wants to convey an idea to the student. The student, mitzad atzmai, cannot grasp the idea as it is in the mind of the teacher. So it needs to be so first of all, we can't read his mind. That everyone knows, right? Everything that's actually going on in the mind of the teacher is private and is not available and accessible to the Talmud. If it were to become accessible to the Talmud, then the Talmud would be incapable of thinking about the idea on its own terms. It would become overwhelmed and, in a sense, brainwashed by the approach of the Rav. So he won't be able to remain separate and independent from the ideas that the Rav has, because it would be too much, be too overwhelming. And so there has to be a tzimtzum. There has to be, for two reasons. One is whether not to be a tzimtzum, it would overwhelm the Talmud. And second of all, it's impossible for it to be any other way. If you want the Talmud to independently be capable of engaging with this idea, then it has to be through a process of tzimtzum. If you just want to create robots, if you just want to create sycophantic followers, then maybe the tzimtzum is not so important. But if the kavanah of the teacher is taka to be a teacher, not a teacher. Teacher is to be able to develop a student. They can stand on their own 2 feet and even think the ideas above and beyond the teacher themselves. Not creating an eved. It's creating a Talmud. So in the attempt to create a Talmud, the goal is to maintain the independence of the Talmud. And for that, there needs to be a tzimtzum in the Rav. So when the Rav, the means available to the Rav to communicate to the Talmud are what? You have a moshel of dibur. Dibur is the means by which the Rav can communicate with the Talmud. The reality is that the words that the Rav is going to construct are not identical with the ideas in his head. All they are phonemes. All they are sounds placed together in an order, in a manner by which things that would otherwise be outside of the realm of the Talmud to grasp can become graspable. But the means by which they become graspable is by them become completely concealed and hidden in the lecture, the speech, the class that the Rav is going to give to the Talmud. But the Talmud wasn't born yesterday. The Talmud has been studying this code ever since he's been a student of this Rav. And so with this code, he can get an inkling of the ideas that the Rav is trying to convey. Now, the Oisius Hadibur, for this Talmud, the Oisius Hadibur, ultimately this is going to become an idea in the Talmud themselves, right? It's going to be part of the Talmud's idea. But there's going to be two parts of it. There are the Oisius, and then there's the idea. It's not that once he breaks the code and he has the idea, he no longer has the Oisius. The Oisius don't become discarded post facto once it's already become absorbed. The Oisius become the context with which he understands the idea. It doesn't mean that he can't then reconfigure those Oisius in a manner which is even more helpful. But his starting point, what is the guf? The guf hadava are the Oisius themselves. The Oisius themselves become the substance of the thing it's producing. But the chayas shebazeh is the oil. The oil that comes with it is what is machaya, the idea. So what it's trying to say over here is that when Malchus of Atzilus, through the Asarim Amoris, Shnivra Elam, Yirakia, Yihir, it's those Oisius in the Mach. I mean, we're not talking about Oisius Man, we're talking about Oisius Amal, Oisius Adibur, Dibra Elyin, in the Nimshal. They are the very substance of the thing. The Guf Adova are the Oisius Adibur. And the Chayes Shebazeh and the Oir Shebazeh, that is the Oir of Atzilus, which was conveyed by the Oisius. Okay? That's what he's trying to say here. So understood. Okay. Now he's going to do something here in the brackets, which He's going to do something here in the brackets now, which is going to be very. Rosie has a tichel. Beautiful. Okay, enough now. He's going to do a quick, in the brackets, try and bring this all back to the shit of him in Midas HaRachamim. However, it's going to be very shorthand, and so I don't want to be married on this these brackets because it's just going to confuse us, and we're going to get into it a lot later. V'zeu masha shit of Midas HaRachamim, and this is what it means that he brought together with the Midas Adin, the Midas HaRachamim. So the way we're explaining Midas Adin now, Midas Adin is the Eisius Adibur, and the Midas HaRachamim is the Eir HaAtzilus. So now we understand what it means, Shita Midas HaRachamim. That he wanted there to be more Eir from the should shine through these Eisius. Instead of it being an absolute concealment, there should be a different sort of meziga, a different mixture of dinam of Havayin Elikim, of Eiros of Atzilus and Eisis Hadibur of Malchus. That it should be the makeup should be not so extremely Midas Hadin. There should be a greater equilibrium between the din and the rachamim. Keinu l'fiyah mavua ata. So that's how it makes sense according to how we're explaining it now. But later we're going to explain when we get to the end, he's giving you a prelude to what's to come, that you'd think that's what we're saying. That's the pshat here. And that is what the pshat is like we're saying over here. But later we're going to go further and we're going to say not just Malchus, but also the Eir HaAtzilus is all part of the Midas Adin. Because why? The Eiros of Atzilus are also Mugbal. Have a Tzir Mugbal, right? They're all part of Midas Adin. The Shiddim Mitzarachimim who are Eir of Teira Mitzvahs. And the Shiddim Mitzarachim is going to be the Eir of Teira Mitzvahs, which is much higher. But again, it's just a taste of what's to come. That the Eir itself is b'chinas yesh. Otherwise, it wouldn't be. What's this pshat? We must be talking about an Eir, which itself is a yesh, not just the keli, not just the Eisis Adibur, but even the Eir, which is being conveyed by Malchus, must also be a yesh, because otherwise the whole thing would blow up. The whole thing would become bottled, become elikus. The be'emes k'moshe ein seif ha'maitzil ha'atzilus keinu mi'atzilus l'biyah ela shemi'atzilus l'biyah hu shnis ava b'chinas yesh mamish ein seif ha'maitzil ela atzilus hakel b'chinas elikus adayin. And it's the same parallel, just like we talk about Tzimtzum Arishin, that the Eir is an Eir Mugbal. Obviously, it's Lefi Erech Madriga, so it's still Elikus. It's still we're still talking in the realm of Elikus. And when it comes to from Atzilus to Biyah, we're talking B'chinas Yesh, but it's the same principle. So the Eir is for sure not going to become. It's not so fundamentally different to the Eisis Hadibah themselves. Otherwise, you won't be able to be Mailim or Master on it. The whole Helen Vehester on the Eir is because it itself is already, able to be hidden. But again, this bracket, we might one day come back when we hopefully get further. You can come back to this bracket and it will all make sense. But at the moment, we don't have enough of the pieces in play from the third section of the hemshekh, which talks about Midas HaRachamim, where we have a whole bunch of different configurations about what is the Midas Adin and what is the Midas HaRachamim. But for the moment, the way we're explaining, he says, the way we're explaining things now, we're saying the Midas Adin are the Eisius Adibur of Malchus Atzilus, and the Midas HaRachamim are the Eiros of the Esespheres of Atzilus. And so initially, the idea was to create a Helen V'Hesed L'Gamri, such that we Yeshudov in different Pnei realized it wasn't Shaykh. So you reconfigured it a bit and added a bit more Midas HaRachamim of the Eir. But we'll spell that out all again later. We're jumping the gun. Try and keep Masuda as we're going through the argument. Because he spends a long time on this argument. He goes You say from beginning this Maimon to the end of the next Maimon. Two quite long Maimorim and really meaty material. So you've got to keep focused. So now we can understand what it says in the Pasuk. We explain Kolanik Bishmi is Atzilus. Why do you use the term Lichvaidi? Kvaidi ubechinas Malchus Atzilus Nikra Kaved. Kvaidi is a reference to Malchus of Atzilus, which is called, because Malchus Atzilus is called Kaved. Why? Kaved is a term we use for a lavush. Like we would call his clothes, his mana, his mechabdusa, the things that honor me. So clothing and kaved are associated. That's why Malchus is called kaved, because Malchus itself is lavush. How's Malchus lavush? Like it says in the Pasuk, lavush Malchus in the Megillah. Also in Tilim, the idea of Malchus is associated with adornment of clothing, and that's just bringing rise from Psukim. But more in Teichen, like we said in the first one, what is Malchus? Malchus is like Dibur, and Dibur is a lavush for the Seichel Midlis. Yeah, Pek Dalatanius, Gimel Lavushim, Dibur. Because the Oisius of Dibur, they clothe and they conceal and they hide the Oy which is in them. So similarly to the Oisius of Dibra Elyin of Dibra Malchus are Lavush to the Eiris Elyonim. Shehem Mislapshim Misalmem, they become enclosed and concealed within them, just like a person's becomes hidden, their body becomes hidden in their clothes. To the extent where it's possible for there to be the creation of Eilis Biyah. So that's why the Pasuk says with Kvedi, with Malchus, Berasiv. This Abbas Biyah, Bechinas Kvedi, Bechinas Levush to Malchus, Shemizenis Abu, Liyis Bechinas Metzias Yesh. And this is not like the way it is in Atzilus, which is called Shmi, which we explained at the beginning of the Maimah. The Atzilus is a ha'ara from the Ein Seif HaMaitzah. Sha'ari b'chinas elikus mamish, and this ha'ari is elikus. Masha enkin eilim es biyah, whilst eilim es biyah, not like that. Shnis av b'chinas ha'levush malchus. They are created from the levush malchus, from Dibra Elyon, the Helen Behester of Shem Elikim, heim nivroim b'chinas yesh. They are a b'china of yesh. And a b'china of ayin, and bittul, and yichud, and achdus, and dveikus, with elikus. Okay? So that is the end of the two parts, bringing Atzilus and explaining Biyah. But now we're going to go further. We're trying to want to explain now. We're going to go on to explain what is the process by which Malchus is capable of being Mailim Umastir on the Eir of Atzilus. Where does Malchus get that ability from? So that is the question we're going to be asking and explaining in the next section. Okay?